My name is Scott McKinlay. I am a partial owner of Renovate America, or at the time I purchased these planes, I was. I'm now involved in other things. But the nature of the company was a specialty finance company in San Diego. I lived in the Bay Area at the time. I bought these airplanes for purposes of commuting and giving myself some flexibility with respect to timing issues. We were in a very developmental mode at that time, and being able to have flexibility to go from place to place quickly helped the responsiveness of the company and our ability to succeed. We bought the planes under the name Romeo Aviation LLC, which was a California limited liability company. I traveled weekly to San Diego from the Bay Area. And in my life, I had spent a tremendous amount of time in commercial flights and commercial aviation and was familiar with its limitations. And so my main purpose for these planes was commuting back and forth from the Bay Area or Tahoe. We had a place in Tahoe and San Diego. Later on, it was Colorado, Tahoe, San Diego, but it was all over the West. And so they were, amazingly useful for that purpose. I found out about Aero Marine the old-fashioned way by receiving a piece of mail from you in my mail stack one day. I kept it. I was working with a very qualified CPA who was struggling with the state of California and was not able successfully, in my opinion, to kind of achieve the tax result that we were after. I then gave you a call, Tom, and we proceeded to lay out a plan for sort of rectifying the situation and making the kind of achieving the kind of goals that we wanted. Well, in my conversation with Tom at Aero Marine, we actually outlined a plan that involved a little bit more detailed response to the questions the state of California was seeking. They wanted, for instance, a little bit more direct validation of the business purposes and the business nature of the out-of-state flights that we were taking. And when we began to map this out and identified specific individuals, it was helpful. We had gathered a lot of the information. We just were not able to think it through in terms of presenting it in the way that the state of California would find acceptable. Yeah, the state of California had refused our request for this exemption, and the reasons primarily were they were not able to understand or persuaded that the travel was business travel, when in fact it was, and it was on our end fairly well documented. Tom, my conversation with you was more getting a little bit more specific, and we brought in basically people I met with who were able to validate that the nature of the travel was business, and that went a long way in terms of satisfying the needs of the state of California. So I did work primarily with Julie after my initial conversation with Tom, and Julie was terrific. She was able to bring in a little bit more insight and with respect to what the state of California required. She was able to communicate with the state of California and with me, and it was much more granular, but it was very, very useful in terms of providing the information that needed to be developed and presented. And it was through Julie, and some of the folks helping her, that we were able to provide the kind of detail that the state of California required. So Julie was a terrific quarterback in the whole process. Julie and I never, had really a disagreement. It was, in my opinion, with respect to what was required in terms of the detailed information. For me, it was a little bit of an educational process because I was not as attuned to what the state of California required. So there was really nothing that came close to adversarial. I mean, some of the stuff is uncomfortable because you're asking people, that you haven't talked to for a while for more detailed information, but it was for the right purpose, and it's what was required. And she was terrific at understanding what was required and then encouraging me to go get it. When I received the letter of exemption from the state of California, I was elated. I knew that we had done everything properly with respect to the laws, the rules, and being able, though, to persuade the regulators at this point that we had done so was a terrific feeling. I mean, I think I sort of analogize it to a house. I mean, that you can buy a house, but until you furnish it, you finance it, you landscape it, and all the rest, it doesn't become a home. This is how it became a home to me, and it was a terrific feeling to get that letter for both planes, actually. Aero Marine saved me approximately $100,000 less the expenses, which were fairly minor. So it was a big savings for both planes. I had originally purchased a Diamond DA-42 in 2016, and then traded it back to the manufacturer and in Canada, and then obtained a more robust version of the same plane. So when you add the two together, my recollection is the amount that was involved combined for both planes was $100,000 approximately. Yeah, Aero Marine was, very, very tuned in to what the state of California required for this tax exemption. I had a CPA who had dealt with the state of California in the past, and things have changed. The state of California used to be a little bit more accepting of submissions with respect to tax exemptions for the purchase of aircraft. And the matter has become much more tightly scrutinized. So when I went to Aero Marine, what I found was a group that not only knew what was required, but knew the individuals who were making the decisions. My CPA didn't have that kind of expertise or that level of expertise. And it was a great relief to be able to find a group who actually knew not only the process, the people who were involved in the process, and what was required to make everybody say yes. And it was a fantastic experience from my perspective. What surprised me the most about the service at Aero Marine was the specificity and precision of all of the requests that were made. It was as if, everyone on your team, Tom, knew exactly where we were going and what was needed to get there. It wasn't a situation where you were kind of hoping for the best. It was a situation of knowing exactly where to go, what to do, when to do it, who to talk to, and that made a big difference. That made all the difference. Yeah, I would definitely recommend Aero Marine to anyone. I could speak from the aviation perspective, who has purchased a plane, who's associated with California and wants to take advantage of the California exemption in the proper way. I would recommend anyone to reach out to Aero Marine. And as I said before, the folks that I had retained before were well-known aviation CPAs and very highly skilled people, understand the business quite well. But this particular aspect of it requires the kind of specificity and expertise that Aero Marine was able to bring to the table.